you're walking around at 80 degrees, you need to go hang around people that are 120 degrees, because being in their presence is going to lift you up. It's going to motivate you to be better. And so you got to change the environment. You got to go maybe seek a counselor, go to church, go find people that are in your church. Maybe have a small group. There's a lot of public sort of, networking groups that you can join that might be of faith or not. But again, so important to change the environment and then start adapting, adding habits into your life.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Erik Allen. Erik is a Christian, husband, father, podcaster, speaker, and coach. There's a lot here in the bio that I'm super excited to talk about, Erik, and I'm gonna let you tell it. I don't even want to kind of spill any of it ahead of time. But first, I want to say thank you for coming on the show. I'm super excited to talk to you and let our listeners hear your story.
Oh, Jason, absolutely, man. Truly an honor to be on your show, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you. Let's start with that. Let's hear your story, your background, and kind of just have a conversation from there.
Yeah, I grew up in a place called Kennewick, Washington, a small town. Grew up going to Sunday school or church, and then I was the kid that would go to Sunday school with a pocket full of GI Joes and excuse myself to go to the bathroom. And for some reason, no one ever came to find me. I would just stay in the bathroom playing GI Joes, And we did little league, and my dad would take my best friend Dave and I literally throw us in dumpsters on Saturday morning and say, "Go find treasure." And that's just what I grew up around, dumpster diving. And still, my buddy Dave is still my best friend today, 36 plus years later now, going, "Hey, I remember when your dad used to throw us in those dumpsters," but that was a fun memories as a kid. But everything was normal up until when my parents got divorced when I was 11 years old. And then when they got divorced, my mom got together with a guy who was physically abusive and emotionally abusive, verbally abusive, almost immediately. And I didn't understand why she decided to stay with this guy. I remember there was times where I'd be outside playing in the backyard and I'd hear them yelling. I'd run over to their bedroom window and I'd look through, and he'd be hitting her with a cordless phone when those were around. And I'd call the police and they would show up, and my mom would never press charges. I didn't understand that. It was this rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then in the middle of my 8th grade year, they got pregnant and they decided to move us from Kennewick, Washington to Stevensville, Montana. And Stevensville had a population of about 1,200 people at that time. And we were on the outskirts of town. So we weren't close to any other building or businesses or the police station or anything like that. And we were on 5 acres. It was a beautiful property, 2 big ponds, lots of room to run around, right by the river. But the problem was this house had 3 bedrooms. And it was one for them, and it was one for my little brother who's a few months old, and one for my sister who's 4 years younger than me. And they said, "Erik, you get to live in the garage." So I literally had this plastic tarp down the middle of the garage that separated my bed from the truck that would pull in. Now, luckily, the half of the garage I had the fireplace that would keep me semi-warm in the negative degree winters of Montana out there. Well, there was many mornings when I'd wake up and could see my breath, from my bed right there. And there was a moment when I was about 13, 14 years old that really changed the trajectory of my life. I was brushing my teeth one night. They came home arguing. Wasn't anything different than any other night. But I remember as I was brushing my teeth, I just felt God saying, "Dude, you've got to look around that corner to see what's going on." And the way the house was set up was if I peeked my head down the corner, it was to the kitchen, to the pantry, to the garage door. And in that pantry area, I see this man on top of my mom, just boom, 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 punch her in the face. And it was in that moment, I had about 20 seconds of courage, and I walked up and I grabbed a cast iron pan out of the cupboard and I swung as hard as I could and I split the back of his head open. And he turned around and he said, "What?" Then as he did that, I took another swing and I split his forehead open. Didn't knock him out. I swung so hard the second time I actually fell over. And I remember him standing up over me and he was starting to yell. There's blood coming out of his face. My mom jumps up like Mama Bear, punched him like 5, 6 times. There's blood splatting on the wall. I mean, this is a crazy movie scene. Yeah. The police show up, take him to jail. My mom doesn't press charges. Rinse and repeat, right? I thought I was a hero in that moment, though. Turns out I was not. I would end up getting kicked out of that house, if we flash forward a little bit, with 3 months left of my freshman year of high school. Stayed with my buddy Forrest to finish out freshman year there in Montana. Moved back to live with my dad back in Kennewick. And he rented a house for him and I. Got me a bus pass so I could get to school. Got around town. He'd put $20 in a cup for my lunch money for the week. He'd put Hungry Man meals in the freezer, cereal milk in the house, and then he'd go stay with his girlfriend. So I see my dad maybe 2 to 3 times a month in passing. And then that gave me a lot of freedom, though, to do whatever the heck I wanted. So I was getting stoned before school, after school, at lunch. Me and my group of buddies, we were what you would consider the stoners of school. We were constantly stoned, or we were taking acid or mushrooms or whatever we could get our hands on. And then when I was 18 years old, I got arrested for having a bong, which is really funny because now it's legal in most states. But
Right,
in
right.
1998, when I was a senior, it was not. And I had to go stay in jail at a tiny town called Dayton, Washington. And this is an old school jail. This is black and white chain gang outfit, bright orange slippers. Scared the heck out of me, but not scared enough to stop. So I got
Mhm.
out, went right back to doing my thing. And then 2 weeks after I graduated high school, I woke up to a Post-it note on the bathroom mirror from my dad that said, "You can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out." So between the ages of 18 and 21, I moved 21 times, living off of couches here, couches there, living off of credit cards because I couldn't hold a job. And one of those moves was to Seattle, Washington, with $100 in my pocket. And by the time I was 21, I was $28,000 in debt, and I had to file bankruptcy. So here I was, addicted to drugs and alcohol, filed bankruptcy. I'd been in jail, and I land my dream job at Universal Records. Now, I lied to get the job at the time, but I landed a job with Universal Records. I was just a mailroom guy, but I was stuffing posters and tracking sales, and I was going to 2 to 3 concerts a week with an open tab. So I got to live a rock star lifestyle without being a rock star and kind of just feeding my addictions at that point. And then my 1 year anniversary came, and this thing called Napster was happening in the world, and it killed the music industry. And I
Yeah.
was at the bottom of the totem pole along with 15 others. We got laid off. And so I started working at Starbucks in Renton, Washington. And I would get off work and I'd go to my ghetto apartment with a 6-pack of beer and drink myself to sleep every night. It was this rinse and repeat situation there for me. And then I'm working at Starbucks one night, and a girl walked in and said, "Hey, would you want to go to a college age event down to our church? Be fun." And I was like, "Well, I don't have any friends and I'm depressed and you're good looking." "Yep. What time do I need to be there?" That's, what was going through my head. And so
Yeah.
I went to that event, and I just remember God going, "Dude, I've been protecting you your whole life. I should have been killed so many times throughout my life. I've done really stupid things. I've had a gun pointed at my face twice, and I'm still alive. I'm 44 years old today. I've never had a stitch. I've never broken a bone. God's been protecting me." But I wasn't ready to give up my worldly desires at that moment. And a month later, it was Easter 2004. I went out and partied with a bunch of buddies. Woke up Easter morning in my buddy's basement, surrounded by probably 10, 12 other guys. And I just remember feeling God saying, "Dude, you're going to go down this path that's going to end your life real quick if you don't start making some changes." And in that moment, for me, I gave my life to Christ, and I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up and I got her voicemail. I said, "Hey, thanks for inviting me to church. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime." And 11 months later, we were married, and we've been married for 19 years this year.
That's
And that's
amazing.
kind of the start, I guess, of where I'm at today.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a involved start, certainly. And I think there's so much there's so much there. And I think a lot of people can probably relate to some part, maybe even multiple parts of your story. And
Sure.
I think uh, that story you told about your moment of and whatever you want to call it, braveness to protect your mother. And
Sure.
it's an interesting thing, like just from a personal standpoint. Like I've grew up with a single mother, and people talk like we didn't have money, like we moved a lot for other reasons, that kind of thing. But I don't have that same like thought of a traumatic childhood that sometimes people that grew up in a quote unquote normal home. I don't even know what that means anymore,
Sure.
but like I don't think of it as like, oh, it was a bad childhood. And like, I even tell my wife, things, and I'm like, yeah, but we weren't abused. Like
Sure.
nobody was hitting me and my brother. Nobody was hitting my mom. Like we didn't have that peace. And I think like that I'm very thankful for that. And when I hear your story, it maybe even makes me more thankful just to know, because I've always, I share sometimes on the podcast a little bit about my childhood and stuff like that, and I always thought I would just think of it as like it's not that bad, and I think of it that because when I think of bad, I think of what you just described, and I think
Sure.
about being put in the situation of needing to protect a parent or a sibling or something like that
Yeah.
in that. And now having young kids of my own, like the idea of of hitting my wife or hitting, like, it's so foreign to me to think about, but like, people, that happens. And I think, trauma breeds trauma.
Yep.
And sounds like you sort of worked through it in a way, and then, but then we're able to kind of make the decision to get better, to, sort of move away from it. And I think it's just, it's great for people to hear that, and like, and recognize that you can find a way to, sort of turn things around for yourself. So I guess maybe, I don't know what the right word here is, but congratulations. That's amazing that you
Sure.
did that.
Thanks.
What, so you get to that point in your life, that Easter,
Mhm.
and what did you do? I mean, because I think sometimes people don't make those changes because, like, how am I gonna do that? How am I gonna? This is the way my life is right now. How do I step out of that and
Yeah.
change? What changes did you make? Kind of around yourself, within your life, to help.
Yeah, I think when people were feeling stuck like I was, in order to make a massive change like I did, and it wasn't an overall, like, long, drawn out change, it had to be sudden for me to change. And for me, I changed the environment. So I went from party scene to finding men in the church that had great walks with Christ. They had great marriages. They were great dads. They might have been great entrepreneurs or great employees or great businesses. And I wanted to soak up as much information as I could from those guys because they were living the life that I wanted. And so before podcast days, I said, man, let me take you out to Starbucks. I want to understand how you're living the life that you are, because that's what I want. And it was in those conversations that I realized that my past and other people's opinions of me does not define my future. And when I realized that, I can step into my purpose and start making an impact by sharing my story. And so to change anything that we feel stuck in, that we feel like we've got trauma or a victim, if we want to change, we've got to change the environment. And I get that it's uncomfortable, but we have to realize that change is uncomfortable. But as we step into that, that's where we can make that impact. That's where we can step into our purpose. We can get away from that victim mentality that holds so many people back.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard that about that, sort of change of environment. And I think I did that subconscious. Like, I think that I ultimately did that, for myself, in a way to decide, this is how I wanted life to go.
Yeah.
Did you, I know you, sort of went to the people in your church. Did you do any sort of, like, formal mentoring or coaching, or was it all that sort of organic, just, finding people around you that were leading the life that you wanted to?
Yeah, it was very organic, but I also started just reading. Like, I hadn't
Yeah.
read really my entire life, and based off those conversations, they would say, "Oh man, this is a great book. You should read." And I just started reading and soaking up as much information as I could to draw close to Jesus. For me, I realized that I wouldn't be there. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for Jesus. Like, I could have ended up in a ditch somewhere dead, right? I've seen people die. My closest friends have OD'd. I've seen suicide happen in my family, right? Like, I knew that that's not what I wanted, but it took me a while to wake up to that. And so for me, the way the growth was at that point was it was getting mentored by those guys in the church. I started joining men's groups, and I just started reading, and I was reading like crazy. I was reading like a book a week. And for me at that time, that was a crazy amount of reading. And I just started soaking up as much as I could and spending time in worship and in prayer. And man, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt from my past. And I did a lot of booger crying, and I just had to get through that. But once I got through that and started hanging around the right people, and they got to speak life into me instead of like this victim and all this craziness about it, and my previous life and all this stuff, like, they were speaking life into me. That's what lifted me up. That's what encouraged me to motivate to be better. And man, definitely my wife and Jesus are the two people that have kept me alive, I think, through these years.
You did you? I guess I feel like when people battle addiction,
Mhm.
there's patterns
Mhm.
that go along with it, and it's you even, as I feel like as part of your story, you sort of said, rinse and repeat, do this, do this same thing each
Totally.
night, kind of thing. You changed environment. Did you do specific things in the daytime to change, to adjust your triggers? I'm just genuinely, my hope with these questions is to help anyone listening, like what can
Yeah.
they do to, if they're stuck, what can they do to, and I don't even know that necessarily it has to be stuck just in addiction. I mean, there's a lot of different spaces that we all get
Yep.
kind of stuck in, feeling victimized of some sort,
Sure.
and some of those techniques that you might have used to turn it around.
Yeah. My wife and I, so the first 5 years we were married, we just got to know each other because we came from broken marriage, or we come from broken homes. We didn't know what a good marriage looked like. We definitely knew what we didn't want in marriage,
Mhm.
but we didn't know how to be good at being married. And so I went to counseling about a year into our marriage because I wanted to figure out what is all that, why am I angry? Why am I so depressed sometimes? And
Yeah.
so I think counseling, some people look down or frown upon that, but for me, that really helped. I went to counseling for about a year, and it helped me just to talk it out. And I got
Yeah.
to talk about things that I had never told anybody. I didn't share my story till I was 38 years old, 39 years old. So I was kind of holding all of that in for a really long time. And so I think if you're feeling stuck, like, one, change your environment, but number two, counseling can help. And if you're a person of faith, go to church. Go find somebody in your church that has maybe a small group where you meet up once a week, and you can be around those people. Because I think, I had Ed Milet on my podcast, and he talked about, look, if you're walking around at 80 degrees, you need to go hang around people that are 120 degrees, because being in their presence is going to lift you up. It's going to motivate you to be better. And so you got to change the environment. You got to go maybe seek a counselor, go to church, go find people that are in your church, maybe have a small group. There's a lot of public sort of, networking groups that you can join that might be of faith or not. But again, so important to change the environment and then start adapting and adding habits into your life that can change. For me, it's waking up early, and my non-negotiable is immediately going to prayer and worship. And that helps set the tone the entire day. And I have this attitude of gratitude, like always. So it's a goal of mine to wake up every day, right? So I'm 44. So if I open my eyes, I immediately say out loud without waking my wife, so I don't get hit there. But I go, man, thank you, Jesus, for another day to see and hug and hold my family. And then my other goal is to make my bed each day. So I jump out of bed and I make my bed, and there's 2 wins in 15 seconds. My brain's already fired up going, whoo, let's go. Come on, it's going to be an awesome day. So set those standards, set those habits in place. Those are easy things that you can put into play, like tangible things that you can do. And I think if we can set those on, the more that you do those, the happier you're going to get, the better you're going to get around adding other habits in. Maybe it's prayer or reading or whatever, or exercising, whatever that is. But I think if you're feeling stuck, change the environment, seek counseling, maybe go to church if that's your thing. Start putting healthy habits into play, and just have this attitude of gratitude constantly.
Yeah, I love that, approaching everything with gratitude. And I think, and I've heard, other people talk about, and I think this is true, that sort of morning routine, however you want to define it, right? Everybody,
Sure.
I don't think it has to be the same thing for every person, but
Right.
as you describe, sort of waking up with gratitude and being, thankful for the day, and making your bed. And I think that the concept there, and I'd be interested if you agree with this, or kind of what your theory is, but to me, the concept is, and I can't take credit for describing it this way, but is taking control of the day before it kind of takes control of you, right? I think sometimes, when
Totally.
the alarm goes off, if we hit snooze a bunch of times, and it's like, if you're starting off kind of dreading what's going to happen that day, you're probably that's gonna carry through,
Yeah.
versus if kind of like you say, like, hop out and you're like, I'm excited for today. I'm excited that I get another day. I'm excited to, spend that time with my family, do whatever, whatever work it is, but figuring out as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, like, why the gratitude piece is so important
Mhm.
is because that is the stuff that's gonna, like, you have to focus on what does, sort of what you are grateful for, and what makes you, experience joy in your days, and then, run in that direction,
Yeah.
versus almost like retreating from what, the things you dread in the day.
Right. Yeah, I think it's so important. I mean, we can always say, "Man, our life could be worse than it is," and
Yeah.
I think if we can open our eyes, then man, we're so blessed. We're so blessed. And for me, it's a goal of mine to put a smile on someone's face every day, whether that's virtual or in person. Like if I mean, I want to accomplish that every day. So when I go out to the store, if someone's got a name tag on, I'm calling by their name. And do this next time you go out to the store, like, you'll call them by their name, you'll see their face light up because they don't
Yeah.
ever get their name called unless they're like getting in trouble or they've got a Karen yell at them, right? But if we
Right.
go in there and we're like, man, Bob, how you doing today? Man, you just see their face light up. And I love to see those moments, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is a great point. I think even, I mean, and I've experienced it myself. Like people, if they address you by name or whatever, just someone you don't know, like you don't expect them to, and it's kind of
Yeah.
like those little unexpected pieces in the day really can put a smile on someone's face, change the direction of their day. Maybe they were having a hard day. We never really know.
Mhm.
So, Eric, what are you doing now? Like, what's your I guess you don't have to run through a whole day, but like how do you structure things in your life to kind of maintain, this really amazing existence that you've been able to really turn around? What is your life like at this point?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's my wife and I are on a mission to break the chains of divorce, abuse, rejection, and addiction, and we're here to change the legacy for our kids, give them a life that we didn't experience. We said I do, we meant it, and we've been married for 19 years, and not every year is rainbows and sunshine. But we work through that. We have good communication. I'm getting way better at communication, though I have a lot to learn still in communication. But as funny as it is, I talk for a living, but then I don't have the best communication when it comes to my wife. So that's stuff that we're always working on, right? Always trying to be better as a husband, always trying to be better as a father. Uh, but I think having those daily habits is what really sets the tone. Again, that non-negotiable for me is coming upstairs to have that quiet time, that worship time. I turn on some worship music and just thank God for just being alive and seeing my family. And man, we're debt free and I have a roof over my head. Like we're all healthy. Having that every single day sets the tone. But I started to read more books in the last year, especially this year. I started to read more books, and I read books on positivity, personal development, leadership, faith books, how to be a better dad, husband, etc. And I try to read a half hour every single day. And I just sit down and I turn on. I like to listen to like EDM type music when I'm reading, so I have the Tron soundtrack on in the background while I'm while I'm reading. But another thing that I started doing, and this is you know interesting, but I'd always anytime I was going to the bathroom, I was bringing my phone in. And then I sit there and scroll Facebook and Instagram and all that stupid things, right? But then what I did was I replaced that. I just set a rule and I said, I'm not taking my phone in the bathroom anymore. And I put a book in there. That's an old guy thing to do. Put a book in there. But guess what? I started reading more books and I
Yeah.
started like accomplishing more books. So I'm reading two books
Yeah.
at a time. And just having those things into place helps me to have a better attitude. And I don't have to worry about the phone that's in my pocket that kind of drains everybody's energy. I'm a podcaster, but I do my posting, I schedule it out, and I try not to get on there. And then I also
Yeah.
have to say, hey, at 5 o'clock at the end of the day, it's time for me to put that phone away and start being more present with my family. Now, I'm not 100%
Mhm.
perfect at that, but I really try to be intentional about being
Yeah.
home and being present with my kids so they can tell me how their day went. And my wife, amazing. She homeschools our kids, and I work from home, so all four of us are in the house at the same time. I go down to coffee and grab coffee from downstairs, and they're in the middle of a class. I'm trying to be a ninja and sneak by, and it's like those moments that I'm like, man, I love the life that I've been blessed with, and hopefully I can just encourage somebody to get away from that trauma, get away from that drama, and realize that you can break those toxic relationships, even if it's family. It sucks. I've had to do it, but you can do that because you are now, if, as speaking to a man, if you're the man, you're the man of the house. You're to provide and you're to protect. That's your family, and sometimes your in-laws or your mom and dad, they might be toxic. You've got to step away and say, man, this is my immediate family that I'm protecting moving forward. And so that's my mission every day is just to be a better dad and a better husband.
Yeah. And you're coaching people, like helping people with that same, sort of same realizations, coaching other folks to I guess with their struggles.
So my coaching right now is I actually coach people on how to start, launch, and run podcasts. And
Okay.
so people who are just struggling, like, hey, how do I get this thing up and running? How do I book the big names, et cetera? I've mentored people in regards to trauma and stuff like that. I've not really stepped into the coaching role on that. It's just been more of a local kind of mentorship, local guys here in town that might have some questions. And I love to be able to just help them out and realize, hey, man, we weren't designed to live in toxic and in this victim mindset. We were designed to make an impact and live in our purpose. And so I do coach people sort of, but I just do it mentally or locally here for that. But for the most part, my coaching is around podcasting stuff right now.
Yeah, I think you'd be a great coach. I think you've got
Thank you.
a really compelling story that and one that you've completely changed the trajectory of your life. So I think that's something that people can gain a lot of just inspiration from. Really, I think it's pretty amazing.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I always like to ask every guest, sort of based on the name of the show being Know Your Why, what's your why? I know you've got really, like I said, such a compelling story. And I think sometimes it's interesting to me when people have, sort of a big life turnaround, what keeps that momentum going in the right direction, and, sort of searching for bigger and bigger success and all of that.
Yeah, I love this question because I think Dean Graziosi talked about this thing that he did 7 layers of why, right? Is why this? Okay, great. Why, right? 7 layers. And that's really why we figure out what our why is, right? And for me, as I went through that exercise, I realized that my why was to break those chains, like I said, of divorce, abuse, addiction, rejection, but change the legacy completely for my kids, that they'll never have to experience the craziness that my wife and I went through. And as a first generation Christian, the question that I always ask is, how do we raise second generation Christians to be in that foundation when they didn't have to go through the adversity that I went through? They won't have to go through that crazy life moment that I did. Now, when they turn 18, they leave the house, right? Like they're on their own. They can then choose to go whatever route that they want. But I'm hoping, my prayer is that I've built a strong enough foundation that they can stay along that path. But my why is to make sure that my kids never have to experience the life that I did, and that they can know that they're loved. There's moments where I look back and I go, I don't know how many times or when my dad said, I love you, or when my mom said, I love you. Right. But I know that I tell my kids 150, 200 times a day, I love you. I love you. I love you. And I want them to understand that, just that any moment that I see them, if I go downstairs, I'm going upstairs, my son will go, I love you, like from the back room, like, cause he'll know that I'm walking upstairs. Like, I love those moments. And so for me, it's just to change that chain of events that have happened in my life, that they'll never have to experience that.
How old are your kids?
Oh, for some reason, I just lost the audio on you.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's fuzzy though, for some reason. I'm not sure what's going on. I can hear you though.
Maybe my mic. I asked how old your kids are. I don't know what is going on here.
I think you asked how old my kids were. They are 10 and 14.
Okay. All right. So yours are a bit older than mine. Is that any better? Are you still is it still sounding fuzzy?
Yeah, it's like almost like underwater, but fuzzy underwater. So it's hard to understand. I'm not sure something happened in the audio there for some reason.
Yeah. Let me change.
Let me see if I can maybe change my speaker. Maybe it's on my end here. Try talking now.
Is that any better? Can you?
Oh yeah, it's way better.
Oh, weird. Okay.
Might have been on my end. I don't know. Maybe my headphones went out, so I apologize about that.
No, it's like usually I should be able to change these things, and it's not letting me change anything on my end.
Okay.
At least if you can hear me now, no. Because my follow-up question to that is, what, when you come from a traumatic background,
mm-hmm.
and you said you're using faith to help, or you want to instill that in your children, but do you feel like some of what you experienced in your childhood years, things like that, the experiences that you went through, do you feel like those experiences shaped you, and probably in some way positively? How do you balance? Because I feel like this is something I always have think about a lot with my kids. Like, how do you balance, like for example, like things like work ethic, like you don't want them to struggle, but at the same time, sometimes I feel like some of that struggle built who I am in a way, and I
Totally.
just wonder like what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I think that's huge. My kids know that I work hard, and we are a family of where we don't have them on screens. They don't have iPads, they don't have phones, and you know, we'll watch a movie as a family on Friday night and maybe watch something on a Saturday night, but that's about it. So our kids are very active, and we engage them in the house of doing chores, and we engage them in outside play, and being homeschooled. This is the first year we've done that. But so it was a learning aspect, and my wife's the teacher, and she's an amazing teacher. She spends the first hour of them just really deep diving into the Bible and how that affects our lives and things like that. Um, and so they see me work hard. They've seen me struggle. They've seen us move. They've seen us, they see my wife and I have disagreements, heated disagreements at times, but they've seen us make up. They've seen us dancing in the kitchen and
Yeah.
things like that. But they know that I work hard. They are involved. I tell them about it. I communicate like, man, guess what? I wake up at 4 a.m. or now I wake up at 4:30. And what I do is I go downstairs and I work out, and they see me do that. And this year I did 101 push-ups every day for 101 days. And so they were like, Dad, what day are you on? Dad, what day are you on? Like, oh, come
Yeah.
join. I want to join you. Right. So they see me working hard. And then plus being a coach of baseball, my son's team is, he sees how hard that I'm out there trying to get the team going. And he's a really good player, but it was just cool. Like even yesterday we had our first win, first game of the season. And I think like my son, he's a great player, loves the game, and he did awesome last night. But he came up to me and he said, Dad, I just want you to know you're a good coach. And man, that just like tugged on my heart so much. I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
dude, thank you so much. Like, I love that he's 10 years old. And he's got so much wisdom. And I learn a ton from my kids because, especially my son, he has the smoothest words to say to my wife or my daughter when they're just like feeling down. And I'm like, man, I need to take some notes here. But,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think it'll be interesting. They see my wife and I, like, she's been home with my daughter since my daughter was a year and a half. So it's just been me solo income. And so they've seen me work hard. They've seen me have to travel for work. And yeah, it sucks to leave, but they're like, we get it, Dad. We know that you have to pay the bills. We know that you're providing for us. So I think they see that hard work in me. And they're both very awesome kids in regards to like what they want to do when they get older. My daughter wants to go in missions. My son, of course, he wants to be a professional baseball player right now, but he's very hands-on and likes to build stuff and things like that. So we just try to implement like, hey, we do chores because that's what helps us go throughout the day. We do chores because it's hard work, and sometimes we have to do hard work because it shapes us. It makes us who we are. And I wouldn't say that we're super disciplined family, but we know that we have to do things. We have to clean up. We have to share this as a team. We vacuum, and we also have a thing in our house that if you leave the light on, guess what? That's 10 push-ups. So my kids learned quick that if they leave a light on, guess what? There's 10 push-ups, and my kids are ripped. They know how to do
Yeah.
the best push-ups I've seen kids do because when they have, and when that happens, they get down. They go, "Oh man, I'm sorry, Dad, I left 10 push-ups." And I don't, we joke with it now, but it's just funny to, they don't leave the lights on anymore, really, So
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think it's, a lot of it just comes down to lead by example, right? Like
yeah,
be the person you want your kids to see, be what they deserve as a role model. And I think that's,
totally,
from what you were saying, that sounds very much like what you and your wife have got in your house. And I think that was, I guess, as much of a selfish question as anything, because those are the things I ask myself. We try to do our very best, but I'm always interested in other people, in what they're what approach you take to when you grew up one sort of way.
yeah,
They're not going to grow up that way, but how do we take some of that good, the good that came out of it, and instill it in our kids? So I think that's great examples. This may be a hard question because you've been very open and shared a lot, but I typically
sure.
ask people, tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, anything that you're open to sharing, I guess. But you've already told us a lot, so it may be a tough one.
No, I think I love this question. This is funny. I've done over 200 interviews on podcasts, and I don't think I've been asked this question before. So I love this. This is awesome. So I'm a podcaster. I've done over 500 interviews. Been doing it since 2017. But on the side, I also do content creation for brands. So I'm on Fiverr as a level 2 seller, and basically just means that brands send me their products, and I do a 30-second or 1-minute video for them, and I send that back. And I've been doing that for about 5 years, and it's really fun to do. And I just get random products sent to me. Sometimes it's coffee, sometimes it's gun holsters, sometimes it's, a adult-sized bouncy ball in the backyard, water bottles, and I love being able to do that. And so it's something that I've done for 5 years. It doesn't make a ton of money, but it's a good side hustle money. And I would say not many people know about that because I just don't advertise it. But it's funny when my friends will be scrolling through Facebook and they'll see an ad of my face or something, like send me a screenshot, dude, what are you doing? And my kids. Some of the ads have ended up on Amazon, and my kids will see it when they're schooling with my wife, and they're like, Dad's Amazon famous. So that's kind of my thing now,
There you go. Well, maybe you should talk about it more so you'll get more business. You'll be in more ads. You'll be out there all over the place. We'll see you on the side of the buses and the billboards here in LA.
Totally.
Your face everywhere. Speaking of, when people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
Yeah, my website is just erikallenmedia.com. It's ErikAllen. So erikallenmedia.com. And then I'm probably most active on Instagram. It's just Erik G, my middle initial, and then Allen. So Erik G Allen on there. I respond to every comment and every DM. There's a contact us form on my website. You can check out my podcast. I've got a ton of free and paid resources on there. I'm happy to answer any questions around life or podcasting. Is kind of my passion. And so, yeah, those are probably the two best places. And I guess my YouTube channel is Erik Allen Media, and that's where my show drops every Friday. And I tend to do a daily motivational video I post every day too.
Awesome. And we'll put everything in the show notes for people.
Cool.
My last question for you, Erik. What advice would you give to someone who, this is always, I ask the question, the advice for someone starting out, and I'll let you take it in whatever direction you want, whether that's someone who wants to start a podcast, or maybe it's someone who's struggling and wants to, find a way to turn their life around like you did. You're totally your choice, what direction you want to go with it.
I interviewed a guy named Greg Reed. He wrote the book 3 Feet from Gold, which was a follow-up to Think and Grow Rich. And that guy invited me to his house for an event one time. And it was so cool to be at that event. But one of the things he said to me and everybody that was there was, when you're starting out, you want to seek counsel, not opinions. And so people who have done what you want to do, seek them out. Don't seek opinions of people who can tell you what to do, but they haven't done it themselves. And so I would say, whether you're starting out in podcasting or trying to get through a struggle of addiction or something like that, seek people who have gotten to where you want to be. And sometimes they're on Instagram, sometimes they're in Life and Facebook or whatever, but seek counsel, not opinions. And that will help you get on the right path. And I would say, for me, I book 99% of my guests for my podcast through Instagram DM. And so a lot of people think, well, I don't want to DM them because it'll just be spam. But I'll tell you, the most active big name people that I've ever tried to reach out to have gotten back to me on Instagram. And so if there's somebody that is living the life that you want, and you want to be like them, or just follow their path to get some knowledge, maybe it's passive income, or maybe it's, quilting or whatever that is for you, find them on Instagram, shoot them a DM. More than likely, they're going to at least acknowledge you, make a comment on their post. But again, seek counsel, not opinions, man.
Yeah, I love that. I agree. It's remarkable sometimes to me that, like, you reach out to someone and I truly, I'm like, they're never going to answer, and it's like, next thing you know, here I've got Erik Allen on the podcast. And
sure.
You got your list. I had Steve Sims on this podcast too, and it's just like,
oh, nice.
There's and a lot of that came actually from his book, Bluefish. Like just ask the question, right? Like, what's the worst that can happen? And so I think that fits with what you're saying. So
such a good book too.
Yeah, it is. Thank you for coming on today. It was awesome. Love the conversation. Thank you for taking the time out. I appreciate it very much. It means a lot.
Oh man, it's such an honor to be here, Jason. I apologize about the technical difficulties there on my end, but man, it was such a great conversation. I appreciate you having me on, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. Folks listening, I know you're going to love this one. Make sure to check out Erik's podcast. And thank you all for listening to this one. Please like, rate, and review so we can get more great guests. Appreciate it.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Ballara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?